but they don't really have radiographic arthritis. They have joint pain. So I'm like, let's just try going gluten and dairy free and see what happens for 6 weeks. And then I would see them back and they'd be like, yeah, my joint pain's gone. My reflux is gone. Like a bunch of my problems that I used to have are now healed just by doing those two simple things. And what I recognize is most of what I've been taught has been wrong in the first place.
That's crazy. Dr. Blake Miller. All right, here's the question I added just for you. What is one health habit every physician should start this week?
Whew, great question. Honestly, I would...
Welcome to the Doctors Investor Club podcast, where physicians and dentists come together to elevate their mindset, build their assets, and create a lasting legacy. I'm your host, Dr. Kyle Stevenson. After years in the OR, I've realized wealth is not just about high income. It's about ownership, freedom, and using your money with purpose. Here at the Doctors Investor Club, we share the strategies the wealthy already know: owning a business, real estate investing, becoming your own banker, and intentional investing. Each week, we sit down with entrepreneurs, investors, and physicians who've stepped off the hamster wheel and are building wealth that outlives them. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep and the impact you leave behind. Let's get into today's episode. All right, welcome back to the Doctors Investor Club podcast. This is your host, Kyle Stevenson. Today's episode is a little different, but I think it may be one of the most important conversations that we can have. Before we talk about cash flow, real estate, tax strategy, or financial freedom, we have to talk about the asset that makes all of that possible: your health, your energy, your clarity, your ability to show up for your patients, for your family, your career, and your future. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Blake Miller. Dr. Miller is a trauma-trained orthopedic surgeon who spent years practicing orthopedic trauma before making a major shift into functional medicine. He is the founder of Freedom Functional Medicine, where he helps patients focus on root cause health, including metabolic health, gut health, hormone optimization, nutrition, sleep, stress, exercise, and lifestyle. And I love this conversation because Blake represents something I think a lot of physicians are starting to wrestle with. Modern medicine is incredible at treating trauma, infection, fractures, acute disease, and surgical problems. But are we truly helping people become healthy? And are we as physicians actually healthy ourselves? So welcome to the show, Dr. Miller. We appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.
Yes. So yeah, Freedom Functional Medicine. We'll get into all that. We want to talk about your story. Tell us about your training, how you got into medicine, what made you want to get into medicine, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So, I think the genesis of me wanting to get into medicine starts as an orthopedic surgeon. It starts early for all of us. I got injured. I was an athlete in high school. Got injured in my sophomore year, got injured my junior year. So I had knee surgery. I had surgery on my thumb for a broken thumb. I was just fascinated by the aspect of all of orthopedics in general. I really liked anatomy. I was big into weightlifting. And so, it was kind of a general transition. It was just natural for us, people that are interested in science and sports. We kind of transition, or at least we have an impetus to go into the medical field in general. And so at 15, when I started everything, I had a really good orthopedic surgeon. I really liked orthopedic surgery. And at age 15, I was like, I want to be an orthopedic surgeon. And so, that journey I never deviated from that. There was about a week in medical school where I deviated to vascular surgery. And I'm really happy that I did not delve into that much, especially knowing what the vascular surgeons deal with today. And so that was kind of the start of it. And then I just kind of kept on that path. And then in residency, I did my residency in Detroit. And I went into residency wanting to do hand surgery. And then as a PGY2, we get exposed to trauma. We get to do some of the cases early on. And I recognized that these trauma patients were usually added on at the end of the day. I was kind of like, that's good enough. Don't worry about it. It's just a trauma patient. And so it gave me an interest in trauma because I would start to think, well, is this good enough for you? Like if you were the patient? And the answer was no. And so that's kind of led me down the path of trauma. I liked doing a little bit of different things. I liked, the biophysics of plates and screws, and what you can do with them. So that's how I got interested in orthopedics and specifically orthopedic trauma. Started my practice in Detroit, and then I joined a practice with Dr. Ryan Molly, who's my mentor in residency. And then I went over to Grand Rapids, followed Dr. Joel Post, also a good friend from medical school.
Mm-hmm.
And we started the trauma center at the Level 1 Trauma Center in Grand Rapids.
That's great. I trained with Joel. He was
Yeah. Awesome guy.
mentor of mine. Yeah. No, fantastic guy. Yep. Very smart guy.
Very smart.
Mm-hmm. So as are you, of course.
Yeah.
And it's funny. Like, I love trauma. I thought trauma was awesome. I did a sports medicine fellowship, but trauma was great. So much fun in residency. You get the music playing and you're fixing stuff. That's, it's fun. Motor vehicle accident, maybe a polytrauma, something like that. But I hated doing this stuff at 2 a.m. So I was like, I could do trauma if it's between 8 and 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's trauma's changed since we were residents too. So we do a lot of stuff during the day. It was one of those things that I really enjoyed, and you make dumb decisions based on your lifestyle at the time. I was 27, single, and had no kids, so no responsibilities other than the responsibilities of doing residency. And so I was like, well, this seems like fun, and I'll do this. Fortunately, when I got into the trauma, the trauma system that I was in, we had PAs and residents that would do the stuff at night. And so it worked out, still worked long hours. But I ultimately didn't feel like I was addressing all the issues with the patients, and I didn't have enough time with them. And so that was kind of the discouraging part about the practice that I was in.
Yeah. I've been following you on social media for years now. And I would see, you'd get out of the OR, you'd fix a hip, or you would do a nail for some kind of fracture, whatever it is. And you'd be on social media talking about the biology, right? You'd get into the details of the cellular biology of the fracture and how to optimize it for a patient. That stuff in orthopedics, we don't think about, or we didn't think about for many years, right?
And I still don't think we think about it enough, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's changing. I think, with the sports medicine docs have done a really good job with the orthobiologics. You talk about, Dawn Buford and Ariana Demers, who are really kind of making headway in the molecular basis of orthobiologics and how how tissues heal and all that stuff. But back in the day, we didn't really even think about that stuff. It was kind of like, bones healed. Yeah. I started to look back at the old literature, and I read a book. It was written by an orthopedic surgeon, The Body Electric, and these things didn't heal for a long time. And it was we started to look at this in Switzerland. These traumatologists is what they would call themselves, and they kind of got into the cellular aspect and the biomechanics of fractures and how these things heal. But I don't think that it's a complex process. And I don't think that the everyday orthopedic surgeon or trauma surgeon is going to think about that. They're just there to perform a surgery and then get to the next one because you've got 6 on the board that day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, it's hard to optimize that stuff. Like, it's a trauma that comes in that day. How are you really going to optimize it? You need 4 to 6 weeks sometimes to optimize a patient.
Yeah, so you just consult medicine. And they optimize.
Yeah, 100%. That's right. Now, in sports medicine, you're right. We're doing a better job. Even sports medicine orthopedic surgeons are still like in the very Western medicine mentality where, we have orthobiologics, but we're not thinking about, getting labs and truly, are we stopping nicotine 6 weeks before? And are we, truly optimizing the patient? I don't think we're doing it enough. I can tell you in my traditional practice, I don't. Because a lot of times, the patients don't take the ownership, right? So then it just becomes stressful and you're like, okay, I'm trying to push this patient to be more optimized, but they don't really want that. They're not pushing themselves. Whereas in a cash pay practice, that patient found you for a reason because they're proactive in their health. It's much easier. They're going to listen to everything you say and they're going to optimize their health because they want to. Yeah. Traditional healthcare is just like that kind of sick care, if you will.
Well, part of the problem with that too is that you have a system where it's the path of least resistance. People will choose the path of least resistance. So if you're a surgeon that is requiring them to optimize their health for better outcomes, they will find a different surgeon that they don't have to do that stuff with. And so as a surgeon, we get paid to do surgery. So we don't want to lose out on those patients. But, so it becomes this double-edged sword where we want to optimize our patients, but the patients don't always want to be optimized. They just want to have their surgery and move on with life because they think that that's the only problem that they have.
Yep. No, that's great. Now, before we get into freedom functional medicine, I want to talk about basically medicine today, the landscape that we're in, Western medicine, if you will. As we all know, reimbursement is going down every year. Mm-hmm. Expenses go up for hospitals it gets pushed down on the docs. Insurance companies are a big headache. EMR is a big headache. The burnout rate is definitely not getting better. It's only getting worse, if anything. And my little brother and I talk about this all the time because he has been in the trauma world as a PA. I'm not necessarily, but I see it too, where because reimbursement is going down, more docs are operating on things they're maybe not comfortable with, or they're pushing the envelope a little bit, like BMI over 40. Well, they used to be like the cutoff, and then it's like, whatever, I can do BMI over 45, or you know what I'm saying? Like people are just pushing the envelope a little bit more, so there's more complications, there's more issues with that, and I think less stellar surgery is being done overall. What do you think about that?
Yeah, 100%. And that was one of the trends that I saw, that this is a big game that we are going to lose. We are not in control of the rules of this game. We have never had a time in history where we've actually increased our reimbursement. It's always gone down while inflation goes up. And so to get ahead of this, I kind of looked at this and said, this is a game we are going to lose. It's designed for us to lose. We are compromising not only our health, but our family, time with our family, to sustain a lifestyle that we have generated on our, almost on this belief that we should have this lifestyle, right? So, we look at the physicians before us and we see what the stuff that they have. And you, as a physician, you get into this and people expect you to live a specific lifestyle, and to sustain that lifestyle, it is now requiring that we work ungodly amount of hours and see an ungodly amount of patients. And as a result, the quality of care is diminishing as well.
Yep, absolutely. And, I talk to my residents and medical students about this stuff all the time. The macroeconomics of medicine, I think everybody needs to understand it. Macroeconomics in general, but also, of medicine, of course. And then, I just thought about, as you were talking, like, you got to see more patients, you got to do more, you got to spend less time with your family because you're trying to make up for, the 2 to 3% you lost the year before and the year before. And it's not, the biggest part of that is you don't necessarily feel it every year, but you look, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you're like, holy shit, I'm seeing more patients and I'm making the same amount I was 10 years ago. That's not right.
Right.
Yep. Go ahead.
And most people are shocked at the amount that Medicare pays for a total hip or a total knee. When I tell them, like, the bill is, let's arbitrarily say it's $75,000, and I'll ask them, like, how much do you think the surgeon got paid out of that? And they're like, I don't know, like $7,000 or $8,000. I'm like, no, it's $1,200.
Yeah,
it's $1,200, and it's 3 months of follow up. And so that's why we have to do, instead of doing 2 to 3 a day, we have to do now 12 just to keep up with that backlog. And then we can say, well, now we have a declining health status, and people are developing arthritis at a much higher rate. And so therefore that we need to do more. And so it becomes this game of numbers where ultimately, like you said, we're going to lose. We are going to lose this game.
Yep. And just one more point I'll bring up is there was an actual study in the Journal of Arthroplasty recently that compared orthopedic surgeons pay over the last 20 years, keeping up with inflation, which is not. So it's down 40% compared to inflation. And they compared it to engineers, lawyers, and one other profession, accountants maybe, and their alls went up. Their professions went up with inflation.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show you, as docs, it's like, we're altruistic and we want to help people and this, that, and the other. But like, I can go work at a soup kitchen to help people. We also want to make money. Let's be honest. Like, you could have been a nurse, you could have been, a missionary, you could have done a lot of things. But like, as a physician, part of it is making a big impact, but also making good money. You gotta be honest with ourselves.
And you saw that back in the 80s and 90s when all these physicians, no matter what subspecialty you went into, they all lived in gated communities. They'd all drive like really nice cars. And now it's like, it's not, you go and you're like Honda Accord, and there's an ER doc getting out of the Honda Accord. Like
Yeah.
this is what we're normal at, and we always were normal average every day. But the lifestyle in the job itself has not been kept up with inflation at all, and it
Yep.
just keeps going down.
Yep. And we'll get into that because I want to ask you like advice that you have for younger docs. But let's just get into keep up with your story on what made you want to make that transition to freedom functional medicine, to not necessarily leave orthopedic trauma, but just kind of phase out and start your own thing and say, hey, this is where I can really make an impact and this is my purpose.
Yeah. So this really kind of started when I got out of fellowship in general. So I started my practice with Dr. Ryan Molly. He was my mentor, and we were interested in this whole health community where we bought up land, and then we would actually develop like a garden, build like food. This entire community would be built around food, and we feed the population of people. And as things had, he went off to Meadville, Pennsylvania, and started Whole Health Joint Institute, he's killing it there, and he's doing a really good job. And he has the right premise. He's never not lost that health oriented goal. And then I was kind of in the infancy of my career. I was a year in, and I wanted to do trauma, and so I went over to Grand Rapids and started doing the orthopedic trauma. And the trauma clinics are, I'd see 60 patients in a day. And that's normal for a trauma clinic. They come in, they have, isolated fractures, and you're just seeing them very quickly. But there was something deeper to it. And then I would see these people in the hospital, and they were just, their protoplasm, they were just not healthy individuals. And then I started to watch my health decline, because I would work from, I'd get up at 4:30 to work out. And then I was there from 6:30 to 10:30 every single night. My early nights would be 7:00 after clinic. And I was aging myself very quickly, and I was never spending time with my family. We had just had, our kids were brand new. Like I had a 2-year-old son and a newborn daughter, and I never saw them. And so, I was way overweight. I was 260 pounds. I was fatigued just walking up a flight of stairs. I'm like, I was probably 36 years old. Like, what is happening to me? And so I just felt that I didn't want to end up like the patients that I was treating. And then I had to do a deep dive into like, what element of this do I actually have a responsibility for? And what variables can I change to produce a different outcome in terms of health?
I love it. Yeah. For yourself and your patients, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Dude, that's great. I mean, I think too many docs continue on the default path. And again, I talk to my medical students about this. Every medical student I talk to, they're only thinking about their next step, their next day, their next, what residency I'm going to get into, and this and the other. They don't plan out their life. And I think the most successful people in this world kind of plan out what they want their life to look like and then reverse engineer it. Well, as doctors, we don't. We just put one foot in front of the other. Like, we'll see what happens. And it seemed like there is this epiphany almost that happens to doctors at some point. Life is good. I mean, you can't complain. You're making good money. You're working hard for your family. But like, why do we want to miss out on our kids' stuff? Why do we think that we're so heroic that our kids are going to love us still, even though, we're not there for the activities they want to do because we're making money for them? Like, who cares? They would rather your presence, not getting presents, right?
100%.
So I think, what you're outlining to me is that you started becoming more intentional with your health, intentional with your time with your family, intentional with your life, and said, how do I take ownership and do the things I want to do and what's best for my family?
Yeah. And you said it really well. I mean, it was totally a reverse engineering type of situation. It's like, instead of taking the easy, just pushing the easy button, like we had, through residency and everything, like just follow these steps. This is an easy way to make a good living and everything else like that. Don't complain about it. You're going to have to work a lot, all this other stuff. There are going to be sacrifices, whatever. And you do collect a big paycheck, but as we both mentioned, I think this time in history, we're seeing the declines accelerated more now than they have been in history, and the squeeze is really being put on us. And I think that a lot of surgeons our age, I think we're in the perfect generation. Like, okay, I've got 20 to 25 years left. Like, I don't want my life to look like what the trajectory of medicine is going. So how am I going to change that? one of my partners that left the level one trauma center with me, he was 10 years older than me. He's like, I have 10 years left. I just want to ride this out. And like, I don't blame him. You know what I mean? He's put in a long career, and I wouldn't consider him to be path of least resistance. He's like, what will get me home with my family most?
Yep.
Because that's all I want. I just want to spend time with my family.
Very good. So in your ortho practice, your ortho trauma practice, I know you had residents and you were busy, maybe even fellows. How did you start diving deep into the functional medicine aspect or interventional medicine, or what do you want to call it? Biohacking.
It was really not until I left the level one trauma center. So during COVID, there was a contract that I didn't sign. And then I went to a competing hospital just down the road. It was a level 2 trauma center that wanted to build a trauma center to compete with the level 1 trauma center in the state, in the area. And my partner came with me. And 3 months after we got hired, the CEO then was dismissed of his duties, and they no longer wanted to go in that direction. So I kind of fell into this general orthopedic role, which I did not like at all, but it was very instructive on the things that I had missed out on in the last 6 years, just doing trauma exclusively. I guess it had been 7 years. And so it really made me kind of contemplate like the theories around arthritis and these different things that I had not thought about before, because it was just told to me like you regurgitate things and that's how you scholastically achieve. And if you regurgitate what you're told, then you have the right answer, and that's always the right answer. But then you start treating these things and people don't respond, and you're like, there's something missing here that doesn't make any sense. And so and we all see it in our practice. We have these people that come in that are referred to us for arthritis, but they don't really have radiographic arthritis. They have joint pain, And so then I'd start to look at this. I'm like, listen, you got to change your diet, because they'd have multiple different health issues. I'm like, you got to change your diet. You got to do this. I'm like, let's just try going gluten and dairy free and see what happens for 6 weeks. And then I would see them back and they'd be like, yeah, my joint pain's gone. My reflux is gone. Like a bunch of my problems that I used to have are now healed just by doing those 2 simple things. Mm-hmm. So then that gave me it gave me a broader lens of which I could look through medicine. Like, what have I been taught, and what is wrong and what's not wrong, what is actually valid. And what I recognize is most of what I've been taught has been wrong in the first place.
That's crazy. That's crazy to hear. Yeah. And when I was getting into it myself, and I'll bring this back to you, but we start, around COVID, right? Of course, you start looking in the mirror a lot more. That's when I realized I don't want to pay as much taxes as I was paying, and I don't want to do this, and I want to be healthier myself. And so I started following Paul Saladino, read his book, Carnivore Code, and just started understanding. I'm like, shoot, he's got a cool way of thinking, which is very it was carnivore, but it was very simplistic. It was basically the opposite of what we learned in medical school. And I heard something, I don't know if this is true or not, but it's like 10 times harder to unlearn things you've learned than it is to learn something new.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of people are. Another book I read I thought was awesome. It was The Plant Paradox by Stephen Gundry, talking about gluten and all these different things. Lectins in plants. And gosh, it was just, once you start diving deep into it, you're like, holy cow, man, what are we doing? We have all this processed food and all this crap that we're doing, environmental toxins, this, that, and the other. I mean, you could go all day learning about this stuff, or not all day. Shoot, you could dive
your lifetime
for years. Yeah. Yes. So good for you for understanding. I mean, you're even deeper in it because you're learning about autoimmune diseases and pretty much everything outside of orthopedics. Not even stuff that's relative. Well,
it is involved with orthopedics in some way, right? Yeah. Yep. So it's
all connected. Yes,
a much broader lens than what most orthopedic surgeons are going to look at. But I think it's all relative to how the bone heals. The bone, soft tissue, it's all living tissue. If we don't understand living tissue, then we're not going to understand how these things function, nor heal, or do any of that. And so when we're looking at this, I envision we're this biochemical vessel that is interacting with a very complex environment. And and I don't think that our body is ever making a mistake. I think it is, I think from a spiritual perspective, we come from the same perspective of, I think we were beautifully designed. And in this beautiful design, we have to accept the idea that, well, maybe our body is not making a mistake. Yes, we have negative consequences, and yes, we have some ailments that are not that are disturbing to our conscious being. But those are alarm signals saying, pay attention to what's going on, because you have to alter what you're doing. So I don't think the body is designed to make mistakes. I think it's actually interacting with the environment that it's operating in a very like sophisticated way, and it's doing it appropriately in that sophisticated way.
Mhm.
But we, as medical doctors, we're trained that your body's making a mistake, and that because it makes a mistake, I need to intervene either with drugs or surgery to fix the problems and the mistakes that your bodies are making, which I think is the wrong premise.
Absolutely. I love that. And so let's get into health and patients that you're seeing. How about for the listeners? What are some common things that you see with your patients that are easy fixes for the day-to-day person, the physician listening or anybody listening really?
Yeah.
What are some easy fixes that we could do to help with our daily life to make us healthier, more energetic, spend more time with our family, and be more present?
Yeah, the easiest one, and I always advocate for the paleo diet. I think the paleo diet has the most research behind it, paleo or Mediterranean. But I think when you look at the paleo versus the Mediterranean diet, the paleo diet outperforms the Mediterranean diet in multiple different studies. And so that is by far. And so the paleo diet is essentially just a real food diet without gluten, without dairy. So those are the main things. If we look at the foods that are going to be most offensive to the body and the way that we negatively respond, and a lot of this work was done by a guy named John Brenneman, who was an allergist in Michigan. And he showed that the four foods that most people are going to respond negatively to are gluten, eggs, dairy, and corn. And so that's kind of where I start, is like, okay, let's eliminate the factors that are going to negatively enhance your immune system, or your immune system is going to start attacking these specific foods, and eliminate those first and just see what happens. I think that is the major thing that I see. The other one is, we look at these hormones, and a lot of women come into me in their 30s like, I think I'm perimenopausal. And I don't think that is actually true. I think it's a metabolic problem. And I think a lot of actually what we're missing is subclinical hypothyroidism. I read a book by a guy named Broda Barnes, he got his PhD in physiology. His whole entire dissertation was on the thyroid gland. And then he went to medical school, he became an endocrinologist and only treated thyroid patients. And in his book, he said your TSH, free T4, T4, free T3 and T3, these numbers fluctuate so much, and they're not instructive on how our bodies interact. His estimate was that about 60% of people in the 1970s had subclinical hypothyroidism and were not being treated.
Hmm.
And so his premise is like, you have to get their basal body temperatures. You have to put a thermometer in the armpit. If you're not 97.8 to 98.2, you're functionally hypothyroid, and that should be treated. But it should be treated with desiccated thyroid, not levothyroxine, because levothyroxine, which is synthetic T4, falsely represents that you have adequate thyroid hormone around. If you look at the data on thyroid function alone, 10 to 25% of the thyroid is going to put out T3, which is your active form. And if you give somebody synthetic T4, that shuts off all ability to produce, or if you shut it off completely, it reduces your T3 output. Mm-hmm. And so I've seen a lot of people go on Synthroid, their TSH drops, and their endocrinologist say, you're fine, but they feel worse. We're not listening to people anymore. We're just treating them based on their numbers, and we are mm-hmm. more complex than like an analog of just our TSH and what that represents.
That's great. I mean, anecdotally, my mom's been dealing with thyroid issues for years. I mean, it seems like every female hits a certain age, and they are. And so she always complains. I go to my doctor. She gives me, I see her for 5 minutes. She gives me more Synthroid, increases my dose every single time. It's 5 minutes. And so finally, as we're getting into this space a little bit more, I sent her to a functional medicine doc on the south side of Indy. And she went and she's like, oh my gosh, best thing ever. Spent an hour and a half with me, explained all the labs, and Synthroid was not the answer. And so anyways, it's cool that you say that. There's so much more depth to the labs that we're getting I mean, us as primary, or not me, but like our primary care docs are just getting the normal labs, right? CMP,
Mhm.
CBC, whatever, and they're not diving deeper. They're looking at LDL. They're not looking at LP little a. And I know there's a lot of places we could go with that,
Yeah.
but there's deeper ways to do it. In functional medicine, getting to the root cause is the way to do that. Your Western medicine doc doesn't seem to be doing it as well. And there's normal ranges, and you could be at the low end of normal, and they're like, well, you're normal, so you're fine. Well, I don't
Yeah.
feel fine.
Yeah.
So can we dive deeper? Well, no, you're good. Get out of my
Do
office.
you, do you know how they get normal ranges?
No.
Yeah, most people don't. And so I ask people all the time, and most doctors don't know how they get normal ranges. So
Hmm.
what they do is it's a population average. So you get a population and you run their labs, and then you get the average of these labs. And they get people that are seemingly healthy. Well, the Journal of American College of Cardiology put out a paper in 2023 that showed that 93% of people are metabolically unhealthy. They've got at least one of 5 markers that are out of range. So we know that we're metabolically unhealthy. And so they get the average, and then they go 2 standard deviations above and below the mean, and they're like, okay, that's our reference range. 95% of the population is going to fit in this
Hmm.
range, and that's how they get them. So if you're on the bottom end or the top end, you still could be an outlier and have disease, but it's not missed, or it's missed because they're like, well, you're in the normal range,
That's
and
fascinating.
and normal is unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Very fascinating. I mean,
Yeah,
when you talk about this stuff, one of my favorite quotes by Jim Rohn is formal education will make you a living, self education will make you a fortune.
yeah,
And it's most doctors, unfortunately, I think most doctors, I'll say some doctors, I won't say most, but a lot of doctors, we went through medical school, we regurgitated well, we memorized, we were very smart, this, that, and the other, but we learned what we learned in medical school. Was that the
yeah,
best thing for us? Like 2 weeks of nutrition? And so when we
right,
come out, people expect us to have all the answers. We learn 2 weeks of nutrition. That's it. And that's every
yeah,
medical school across the country. So
yeah,
the stuff that you're talking about here, that should be normal for every doctor to hear that and be like, oh, yeah, I knew that. Well,
yeah.
to your point,
But we
most
don't.
don't, including myself.
One of my favorite quotes is by Upton Sinclair, and it's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it.
That's a good point.
And,
Yeah.
and and that's where I think medicine is right now, is that they
Yep.
paid us really well to not understand further, because we've lost our curiosity, because we don't have time to be curious anymore.
Hmm.
And before I got on the conversation with you, I'm diving deep now into Gilbert Ling's philosophy. Gilbert Ling was a Chinese American that came over right after the war. There were 4 Chinese disciples that came over, and 3 of them won Nobel Prizes. Gilbert Ling was the only one that did not. But he believes that we have the entire cell structure incorrect. Like, the entire idea about the cell and how it functions is wrong. And this kind of goes off the work of another guy, Harold Hillman, who was a neurobiologist over in Britain. He was saying that these organelles that we see in the cell, we can't actually tell that they actually exist because we're staining them with heavy metals. And how do we know that this isn't just an agglutination or artifact as a result of them responding to a toxicity of staining them with heavy metals? Gilbert Ling says that there's no such thing as free water. Well, there's probably free water in the body, but there's no free potassium, no free electrolytes. They're always bound to something. So we have conventionally been taught that sodium and potassium are separate. Sodium's outside the cell, and potassium isn't inside the cell, and that's true. But his belief is that the sodium potassium pump didn't generate that gradient. It is likely due to a more complex structure of where potassium is actually attached to glutamic acid and aspartic acid, and it's not truly free. Water itself is not water. It's not in liquid phase water. It's in something called the fourth phase water, which is Gerald Pollack's work. In this fourth phase water is exclusion zone water, where it actually squeezes out these electrolytes, and it creates a lattice where they can't interact, but it has this ability to conduct electricity. And so that's kind of where I'm at now with trying to figure out how the cells work. And now I'm getting into Chinese medicine and trying to figure out how Chinese medicine fits in with this new association induction theory of how cells interact.
Wow. That's fascinating. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, Chinese medicine, you could talk about that. Gosh, I remember even going through medical school as a DO, and we're learning about osteopathic manipulative medicine. And
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm going to be an orthopedic surgeon. I don't really
Right.
care about this stuff,
Yeah.
right? And I was like,
Yeah.
you know, the sacrum is connected to the cranium, and I'm like, what the heck? Well,
Yeah.
now the more I dive deeper on that stuff, I appreciate it so much more.
Yeah. I just got done reading a book. It's called The Spark in the Machine, and it's written by a guy that is he's a conventionally trained medical doctor, ER doctor in Britain. And he also is trained, he's a licensed acupuncturist, and he trained with some of the best acupuncturists in China. And his book is all about how these points in Chinese medicine relate to the embryological development of the cell, and how each point is consistent with fascial connections from the embryology. And then he goes through the embryology, how the embryo develops, and why these points are consistent with these things that are in contact with the embryo.
Dude, I love that.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there's so much to it. It is
Yeah,
fantastic.
like you said, you could spend a lifetime going through this stuff and still not understand it. And it's Gerald Pollack, who I mentioned about Gilbert Ling. So Gerald Pollack came up with this idea of the fourth phase water, and it's not truly H2O. Like he said, if you we're both surgeons, so as you're cutting through muscle tissue, or you like in let's say that you were to cut a muscle or like poke it with a needle, water doesn't come out of you, and
Mhm.
it's 80% water by mass. And so water doesn't flow out at you. So we know it's not in liquid phase water.
Yep.
It's not ice. So it's not a solid phase water, and it's not a vapor. And so it has to be in a fourth phase. And that fourth phase is this exclusion zone water. And interestingly enough, he was talking about studies where what actually increases the lattice structure of this exclusion zone water is infrared light. And people are using infrared lights all the time. And so we're trying to
Mhm.
figure out, and because this exclusion zone water has an electrical charge to it, he said it acts like a battery. And so the mitochondria may not exist the way that we think they exist. It's probably an electrical charge in the water in our body that is it's interacting with the hydrophilic surface, making this exclusion zone water, and therefore it creates this electrical conduction circuit, and we can communicate way faster than we thought. Fascia is the way that all of our cells connect, and so these fascial connections become really important, which then comes back to vitamin C and vitamin C, your vitamin C content, because that is how collagen develops. Is makes a hydroxyproline to add on to these things, and then collagen itself is a trimer, which actually has some electroconductivity aspects to it as well.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. On that note, I want to get into a couple points. I'm just going to bring up a little quick list of things you can touch on that relates to what you're talking about. But then I want to get into, you starting your business, creating your brand, and then some advice for young doctors out
Yeah.
there who are struggling, trying to figure out life. All right. So real quick, the way you're talking with, water and infrared light and all this stuff, what do you think about grounding? Getting your feet out there in grass, barefoot.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at a little bit of research on grounding. I think that it makes more sense to me now that I understand the cell a little bit better. We are charged. We
Yeah.
we know that. We know that we have this electromagnetic frequency to us. I think grounding is a really important aspect of how we recharge. So I'm a big fan of grounding in general.
Hmm. What about creatine?
Creatine is one of the most studied supplements on the market, and I think that in my experience with creatine, it either is life changing or does nothing. So it's cheap, it's cheap, and it's worth a try. Most people that take it, they'll notice like life changing energy. That they'll feel like they have tons more energy. So I think it's worth it. It either does. It's like either life changing. Like I said, it's either life changing or it does nothing.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep. I take it every day. And,
Yeah,
I guess I don't know what life's like without it,
yeah,
but I feel good.
yeah.
And it's good for the brain too. Right.
Correct. And then let's say that it's placebo. Well, who cares?
Right. Exactly. To your
It
point, it's
works. Yeah.
cheap.
Yeah.
Yep. What about, I'm going to preface this by saying certain hospitals will bonus out their primary care physicians for pushing statins on most of their patients. What do you think about statins?
I mean, I'm inherently against all drugs unless they're needed, right? So I am a drug last type of person.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of what I've seen, especially with hypercholesterolemia, which I still do believe that that causes heart disease and all this other stuff based on the research that I've seen. So I still believe that that is, even if it's untrue, it is directionally correct. We know that there's a problem there. I think it's more of a hypothyroid problem than anything else. And so I fix people's hypothyroid, and that often fixes their glucose and their hypercholesterolemia.
Mm-hmm. Are you guys using peptides at all?
No, I was for a little bit, and then I got away from it.
Okay.
To me, the peptides are a big question mark. I have no idea what's going to happen with these things. My concern is when something becomes really hot on the market and everyone wants it and everyone can get it. And the lens I look through this is you can get it from anywhere. You can get it from Trim RX. You can get it from Hims. You can get it. I think you can get it from Hims. You can get it from all these places, right? So if it truly was that the pharmaceutical company thought that it worked and it was what it was designed to do, they would sue these companies.
Mm-hmm.
They would sue them, but they're not. So then the question is, well, why aren't they suing them? And I think that there's a move for everyone to be on them for whatever reason. We don't understand them enough. I think that obviously I'll get a lot of pushback from a lot of people but I don't understand how to me, it's a drug. We're pushing physiology in a direction that it doesn't naturally want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And who's to say that I'm a better chemist than God is?
I like it, man. Fascinating.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah, because well, two things on that with the peptides. There's a big difference between taking it orally and getting it IM, right?
Correct.
Yep. And so that's a big portion of it too. And everybody is following the social media stuff, which is not good.
It's not. It's our new educational system it's probably more corrupt than the conventional educational system.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because it's all driven by money.
No question. And so on the peptide talk, what are your thoughts on Ozempic, Wegovy, all these medications that are out there?
Yeah. I mean, for I think we have diabetes wrong too. I think we fundamentally understand diabetes incorrectly. But again, I think that it's the quick fix to a problem. Now, if somebody is morbidly obese, here's the caveat that I have to this: is that if you get up you look in the mirror and you don't like the person that you see, it's going to be very difficult to function throughout the day. Mm-hmm. And there are going to be a lot of negative things that happen to you subconsciously because you don't like the person that you are. So if that's the caveat that I have with GLP-1s. I don't think that they're a lifelong tool. I think that there are some potentially really bad side effects to them that, and I shouldn't say side effects, effects to them that are going to be damaging to the public as a whole. However, if we can get you over the hump and you can actually start to like the person that you are, and you start to change your habits based on the belief of who you are, then I think that they would be potentially beneficial.
Yep. I think in the right hands, they're good, right? It's like we can microdose, we can kind of jumpstart somebody's life with them, that are having a hard time. But I think too many docs are giving them and using. I mean, it's a tool for sure, but if you overdo it or overuse that tool, you can cause problems, especially if you're not educating on lifestyle on top of that. So if that person stops taking them, then what happens?
Yeah. And I think tirzepatide came out in 2017, I think is when it came out. And it's like, okay, well, the number of drugs that actually come off the market in 10 years is like 33%. So the FDA is at a solid D on approving drugs, right? And then you have stuff like Darvocet that was on the market for 30 years and like, oh crap, this is bad. We should take it off. Vioxx was the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then you have, you can look back in the day and you're like, doctors were advocating for smoking and we're advertising it, right? And so they're like, 40 years later, they're like, oh crap, we shouldn't have been doing that too. So, we are living in this massive experiment, and we are the experimental animals.
Yep. I love it, man. I talk to patients all the time just about this stuff. I'm still a full-time orthopedic surgeon, so it's a small part of it. But I say, if God produced it, then you should eat it. Mm-hmm. It's like if it comes 100%. From an animal, a plant for the most part, then eat it. If it comes from God, but if it comes from package, or what's the guy's name that created all the vaccines? Bill Gates.
Yeah.
If he's making fake meat, I'd be very weary, right?
Yeah. Correct.
Yep. So, all right, now let's just talk about you taking ownership, you finding a need, creating value, knowing your purpose, that you can, you've accumulated all this intelligence on functional medicine, and you're understanding the body and the human biology. And how do you go about starting your own practice? I mean, we didn't learn anything about business, creating a P&L statement, all these things. Like, how did you go about doing that? And
Yeah.
yeah, take us there.
So fortunately, I started the business with a good friend of ours. So it's myself, and then I have a psychiatrist that is functionally minded as well. My wife had a business degree, and then his wife also had a business degree. They have taken over the business aspect of everything, and I've learned about business over time. So partly, I mean, obviously, you've given me some recommendations and some resources to look at, which have been helpful. I'm not a business person, but you find the right people, and then if you're looking to change a movement and it's something that you honestly believe in, you will find the people that I think God aligned us perfectly with these people that we needed. God has different intentions for us. And, obviously we're taking a spiritual aspect to this that some people may agree or disagree with, but it's hard for me to discount this idea where all these random things just kind of align, and then it just blossoms out of nothing. And so, we met this couple years and years and years ago. We've been in discussion with them about just the changes in medicine and how difficult it is. And then all of a sudden one day it's like, hey, I need to do that. I want to do this business. And our friend was like, hey, I'll just do your business. I will write. I'll basically put a business outline for you together for free just to help you out. And then she liked the movement so much. She's like, I want to be part of this. And then, so that's how it started. We started small. I needed to show proof of concept. I needed to know, okay, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. Is the general public going to adopt me as somebody that is trusted with their health? So we started small. We rented a really small office. It was $2,300 a month. It was something that was easily attainable. We had 4 rooms. It blew up very quickly. I mean, we invested in the community. So that was the big thing, is like, I wanted the community to know that I'm actually invested in their health in general. The community I live in, Rockford, Michigan, is they are more than generous in giving back to the people that pour into them. And so they just, the floodgates opened up. We made massive amounts of money really quickly. And then we decided in a year that we needed a much bigger space, and it's not slowed down. So, I mean, it was obviously a lot of work, but God had his hand in all of that development.
Dude, a couple different things. I mean, I love you pointing towards, God to have a huge hand in what you're doing, because to your point, like when things line up that well, you've been praying about it for all these years. That lens is so impactful and powerful. And it's like, when you hear that, when you're thinking about these things and you're like, man, this is just lining up so well. Like I gotta jump. I gotta execute this. And then the other thing I want to say is, like, a lot of people do have dreams and aspirations to do a lot of these things, but they won't do it, right? They won't take action. And I think a lot of doctors, because we make good money, we're just comfortable where we're at. It's like, yeah, I make good enough money. But you know what? If you feel that pull, if you feel, God pulling you in that direction, like, take ownership and jump and take action and do what you did. I think that's awesome. And
well,
then go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the big things that I didn't tell you that really got me into functional medicine is it was during the height of COVID, and I was really depressed. I think all of us were, right? In medicine in general. I was sitting at my counter, and I'm like, and I was just praying to God. I'm like, why would you have me do this? Like, why, that I hate it. Like, why would you have me do this? And I verbally heard, get a function. I was the only one in the room, and I verbally heard, get a functional medicine certification. I didn't even know what that was. Like, I didn't even know what it was. And so that's why I believe that the Holy Spirit has been moving all of this, is because that's how it started.
Very cool, man. Gives me chills thinking about that. Yeah. If you have not listened to my podcast, there was an episode I did about the Bible. I read the 1 Year Bible. And so I started, I've been reading Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and all these, success books over these years. And, Think and Grow Rich and all these things to build wealth. And then alongside that, reading the Bible, came to realize the Bible is the originator of all these sources. Let's be
Correct.
honest. And so I did a
Yes.
podcast episode on that, basically arguing for it. And
Mhm.
it's pretty powerful. So listen to it if you get a
I will,
chance.
for sure. Yeah.
But anyways, man, proud of you for taking that leap, for doing what you're doing, creating a brand, not only on social media, but in your community. That's where it's really more important, right? That's where
Yeah.
it's more impactful.
Yeah.
It's great if somebody from California hears about it, but it's like your community is where it's at. And that word of
Yeah.
mouth spreads like wildfire. And then people continue to love you guys for making that impact. So kudos to you. So, all right. Last thing we'll talk about, and then I'm going to get into this quick rapid fire again, but advice to young doctors. I mean, there's a lot of medical students who have a ton of debt, they're high interest rates and the reimbursement's going down, as we talked about. The landscape's changing. AI is coming in. I mean, the landscape is changing immensely. And I think now is the time that people need to start really thinking about their life, their intention of what they want, their purpose, really. So what advice do you have for these young medical students, residents, young physicians?
Yeah, I think that they've chosen a noble field, right? But the biggest problem that I see is people lose their humility. They think they know everything. I've just demonstrated to you that we don't even know what the cell is, and that there are theories out there that I've gotten into theories where we don't even know that viruses exist, and so it's like, and there's plenty of evidence to show that that might be true as well. And so we get through and we think we know everything. You have to question everything. Like, let's say that you know what the thyroid does because of what you've been told the thyroid does. Mm-hmm. Have you looked at the seminal studies that actually show that it actually does what it does? We just take everyone's word for it, right? Yep. And so it's like, well, how much of this is through a filter of what you think it does, and are you just parroting what you've been told? And so now we just think that it does all of this stuff because who's reading the seminal work? It's not the people that are teaching us. They're just parroting what they've heard. So part of it is don't trust everything you hear, question everything, and to a degree, and realize that what we're getting often is education through a filter. And this filter is based on interpretations of the work, not the observations, but the interpretations of their work. And so if I were to reproduce this, I might see the same observation they did, but I might come to a different conclusion based on a different theory. Mm-hmm. And so everything is based on a theory, and those theories are fragile. They can fall apart, and they don't fit all of the context. So for instance, when you're looking at a mechanism of action for drug, about 60 to 70% of them will tell you that they don't really understand the mechanism. Like, well, they're right there. That tells you that we don't understand enough about this. And so remain curious and don't trust whatever everyone tells you. And then the other thing is have confidence in yourself. So, you cannot go out and start a business if you have no confidence in yourself. You're not going to be successful. Be confident in yourself and know your value, because you will continuously, if you work for a hospital, you will always be devalued.
It's great, man. That's great. Love that. Nope. Everybody needs to hear that for sure. Yeah. Fascinating. Insatiable curiosity, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. That's fantastic. Well, good. Let's, usually I end with 4 rapid fire questions. I added one just for you.
Let's do it.
What book are you reading right now?
Life at the Cell and Below Cell Level by Gilbert Ling, and A Beginner's Guide to Acupuncture.
I love it, man. You dive deep. Dive deep. I love that. What advice would you give to your 25-year-old self?
Good question. Go into medicine, but go in with an open mind. Don't. I actually was thinking about this the other day. Like, what would I tell myself? I would have told myself to just remain curious. That when I lost my curiosity, there was a time in college that I was excited about learning and health and teaching. And I lost that throughout medicine because it became so mundane, and it became mundane because I thought I knew everything. So I think I would say, you don't know everything. Stay humble and stay curious.
What is your definition of wealth?
Ooh, well, I think that from my experience, it is spending as much time with the people that I love and will equally love me back, and um, having the ability to have the things that are needed for those things. So I don't think it is. It's certainly not owning a fancy car. You just need to get from A to B. It is truly being around the people that you love and will love you back.
All right, here's the question I added just for you. What is one health habit every physician should start this week?
Whew, great question. Um, The biggest one that I think is the most impactful is eating 3 meals and not snacking, with the caveat that you don't go hypoglycemic, right? So if you are not truly hypoglycemic, I think maintaining 3 meals a day and not eating within three hours before you go to bed, I think you'll sleep better, and I think that you'll feel well satiated with 3. A lot of times we eat out of boredom, and so that is something that we just need to be mindful about.
Yeah. Yeah, you eat out of boredom. Or what I've realized is the hospital has the crappiest food
Yeah,
ever. And we
yeah,
sit there in between cases like, this is insane. You have
yeah.
to eat, peanut, or what do you call it? Oh gosh, graham crackers and peanut butter, Jif,
Yeah,
with
yeah,
tons of sugar,
I know.
right?
Yeah.
And a
Well,
Diet Coke or regular Coke. Terrible.
I've seen that most overeating is a result of boredom or
Mhm.
stress.
Yep. Yep. You get everything else in your life right, then you won't have boredom or stress.
Correct.
All right, last question. Proverbs 11:25 states, "A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed." If you could make one major impact by giving back, what would you focus on?
Um, I think that's kind of what my life work is trying to dedicate to now. Is I have no interest in money, because I think if you have a good concept and a good idea and your purpose is well articulated, or at least well described to the public, money will follow that. So
Mhm.
it is my goal is to restore health to everyone that I touch, whether that be, and I think that, financial wealth is part of that too, right? So a lot of people come in and they're like, this is really expensive. I try to keep that in mind and say, if you're not financially healthy, you're also not going to generate any type of physiological health. And so a lot of it is there are multiple levels to this, but it's generating health in people, both financial and my focus is mainly physiological, but I think financial health is really important in that aspect too.
Yep, that's great, man. Yeah, Blake, we appreciate you coming on, man. You are doing big things, and you're doing
Thank you.
important work, not just for patients, but for physicians, right?
Yeah,
People
thank
listening to
you.
this, you're making people, you're challenging them, think outside the box.
Mm.
So we really appreciate that. Where can people find you?
So you can find me at Freedom Functional Medicine. I'm on Instagram. You won't see me a lot on there, but we have a social media team that does all the social media. Facebook, same, Freedom Functional Medicine. I think we have a TikTok as well, but we don't post as much there. It's mostly Instagram and Facebook. And then our website is freedomfunctionalmedicine.com.
Perfect. We love it. We'll get this out here soon, man. Thanks a
Thank you
lot.
very much. Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it.
This is my time. I'm on the rise. Can't hold me down. I'm too fly. This is my time.
Thanks for listening to the Doctors Investor Club podcast. I hope today's conversation inspired you to think bigger, dream bolder, and take the next step toward financial freedom. If you're a doctor or dentist and you're ready to join our community, head over to doctorsinvestorclub.com. There you'll find our free mobile app and private forum, built exclusively for physicians and dentists, featuring AI tools, curated investor resources, and live event access. And if you're at the stage where you want to see real estate opportunities we personally invest in, you can visit investwithdrkyle.com. There's no pressure, just transparency, education, and access when you're ready. Subscribe to the show, share it with a colleague, and remember, you're not just building wealth, you're building a legacy.
Can't hold me down. I'm too fly. This is my time. Ready to shine.